You ever try to chop firewood and the axe just keeps kind of bouncing right off the surface? When you get healthy wood, the axe tends to cleave right down through the grain of the wood. But when you have old wood that's got a lot of bug damage, gnarls in it and things like that, it can be kind of difficult to have your axe interact with the wood in a way that's particularly productive. In this video though, I don't want to talk about chopping firewood. What I want to talk about is interacting with people and sharing ideas with people and experiences that I've been having with people recently that should go smoothly and productively, but instead feel an awful lot more like an axe bouncing off a piece of old diseased wood. Hey everybody, this is Praxis. Over the past decade or so, there's been kind of a constant onslaught of bad news. In the past, if you were someone that was into prepping and preparedness, and you talked to people about, X, Y, or Z might happen, so it might be a good idea to get ready for that, it was easy for people to kind of, dismiss those sort of ideas because a lot of people had never experienced anything like that. And even though those sorts of events had happened all throughout the past, they weren't the kind of things that, at least in our recent history, people had really seen. But again, over the past several years and decades, there's been an onslaught constant of economic events, geopolitical, war events, pandemic diseases, all the types of things that preppers tend to warn people about. I know myself, at this point I've had, I guess probably somewhere close to about 100% accuracy in terms of predicting things. And that said, I don't tend to stick my neck out that far and make predictions too far out into the future. I tend to just call things when I think that they're, pretty plausible in the near term. But, at least in terms of my circle of, people that I talk to, when I've given them heads ups about things, essentially 100% accuracy. And, despite the past several years and decades being difficult for people, I thought one of the upsides is that, for normal people, for norms or sheeple or whatever you want to refer to them as, it was going to get a lot easier for them to wrap their mind around a lot of the things that we're talking about and maybe start getting ready themselves for more things in the future along those lines. Because in the past you could learn about things historically in books or, on the news about events happening in different parts of the world, but there's been a continuous onslaught of this stuff, right here, right now, right up in people's faces. So it was my expectation that it would get a lot easier for preppers to talk about the things that we do with people and for there to be a degree of credibility built into, the types of things that we talk about, especially like if you're someone like me that, I don't know, maybe I've spitballed, one or two things, a little bit off here and there, but, for all the big things, it's like 100% correct in terms of, letting people know about things. But the reality that I'm seeing, now is that that's not at all the case. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that in this video. Now, there's two reasons for that. One is, this is just personal, this is just a praxis thing, and maybe you guys have never experienced this. Maybe I'm just a dreadful communicator. I don't have a particularly successful YouTube channel. Maybe I'm just not really good at conveying information and everything that comes out of my mouth sounds like snake oil and lies. That could be the case, I'm open to that. That's not something I'm going to explore in this video because that's some self-introspection I guess I would have to get into. In this video, I want to talk about the possibility that this is not an issue of the signal being sent out, but the signal being received. And to be honest, I think that's probably the much more likely explanation for this. Why you can talk to people who have just gone through economic collapses and wars breaking out and pandemic diseases, and we talk about either those things continuing or new events similar to that starting up in the future, or similar events. Still there is a huge degree of incredulity that at least I feel when I am communicating with people. And I want to talk a little bit about why that is. First off, I had kind of an insight recently about what it feels like to interact with people on this level. And this is more of like kind of a comedic aside, because I find it really irritating, to be totally honest. it doesn't really, I don't really try to invest myself in whether people, believe what I'm, telling to them or not. It's like, we're doing fine here, and it's like, you guys can take it or leave it. But I found myself just kind of being irritated by it. And I don't think that it's a situation where I feel like, it hurts my feelings. It's like, why don't you believe me? Like bothering me on that level, because, again, like I said, when you're right and right and right and right over and over and over, I think I've built up my self-esteem where, and I know when I'm interacting with people and they are not buying into things, I'm not thinking of it in terms of like, oh, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. It's really just like, okay, well, more of that, more of that like kind of thing where people, just, they don't want to hear what they don't want to hear. But it still irritates me. And I realize, and this is kind of the funny aside that I wanted to relate to you, it irritates me in the same way as if you go to a theme park and, or like a Renaissance fair. And I've gone to like, medieval festivals and Renaissance fairs, and I've been to theme parks. And, I like going to those things, but there's one thing at those things that really bugs me. And it's when the actors that like work at these festivals or theme parks interact with you, insisting on staying in character. I just really do not like interacting with people like that. Like if there's a guy that comes up and he's like a pirate, and I never carry my cell phone around, whenever I'm doing anything enjoyable. So this would not be a situation for me, but I think it serves as a good example of it. Like let's say you pull out a cell phone and there's like a guy that he's like a pirate, and he's like, I'm not even going to try a pirate accent, but he'd be like, yee, blah, 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 like what's this magical device that you have here? I don't understand this thing. And I just find that really, really irritating. And this ties into the idea of trying to communicate preparedness ideas with other people. And the thing that I find irritating about it is I don't like interacting with people in character, because I don't know if I have a because for that. I just don't like interacting with people in character. I want to be real, and it's like, I know you're not a pirate. I know you're not from like the 15th century. It's like, just be real with me, dude. So I don't know, it's just my thing. I just don't enjoy interacting with people in character. And I realized recently that interacting with people in terms of prepping stuff, in terms of geopolitical stuff, especially, I come from, I'm up in New England. I've got a lot of liberal friends. I've always thought of myself as a liberal when I was, kind of forming my own political identity. This was back like in the early 2000s or so, when George Bush was in the White House, and we were going to war with Iraq for weapons of mass destruction, which was very clear weren't there. And there was just all this like craziness. Like back then it was like the liberals who were, anti-war, and it was the liberals who were anti-intellectualism, and it was the liberals who were, against big pharma, and it was the liberals who were against big agri and everything. And now today it's like completely the opposite, where it's like it's the conservatives who are against war, and the conservatives who, seem to be against, the big pharma and everything. So I guess now I'm conservative. I haven't changed any of my views, but now those, all those kind of like, all the kind of views that used to be considered like extreme left liberal are now like, extreme alt-right. So anyway, I interact with a lot of people who still kind of consider themselves liberal. And while I have kind of held to my values and beliefs, and, if liberals agree with those core beliefs that they used to agree with, then I guess I'm still a liberal. And if they don't, then, whatever. But, a lot of people that I know that associate themselves with being liberal have kind of needed to divorce themselves from a lot of the things that they used to know, a lot of the things that they used to believe, a lot of the values that they used to hold. And I promise I'm tying this back into the theme park characters. And a lot of times when I'm talking with people, about issues, let's just go to COVID. It's like the best, wonderful example of very clear-cut, issues, at every level, including, what I'm about to describe here, where you had people that had been diehard, like, I question big pharma, and I question their motives, and I question, the profit motivation of, these big pharmaceutical companies. So people that were there, and then because of COVID and like the fear that was induced in people, they understood all those ideas about like, it's just common sense. When you got business, it's driven by profit, and you have individual people that work within the businesses, and I don't think individual people generally tend to be evil, but when they all turn into this octopus corporation, it develops a life and a mind of its own, and a corporation can act and do evil things, even if it is populated with people that don't think of themselves in that way and aren't acting with that as a motivation. But the corporation it's a monster robot kind of thing, and it doesn't have emotions, and it doesn't have feelings, and it doesn't care about people, and all it cares about is profits, because that's what it's designed as. It's kind of like artificial intelligence. A corporation is artificial intelligence made up out of human components, with the programming to seek out profit. And all my liberal friends all understood that and knew that back when conservatives thought it was crazy for people to believe that, and I was one of the crazy liberals. All of my liberal friends understood that. That's the way corporations work. That's the way corporations really always work. You occasionally get the the oddball kind of companies where you get like one special person and they like really grab onto that corporation and they steer it in a certain direction. But that's kind of the rarity. Usually, these things develop a life and mind of their own, and they kind of go off in their own, self-motivated direction of making profits and humanitarian and social concerns. They don't matter to a corporation. The only thing that matters to the corporation is profit at its core. But during COVID, liberals got scared, and that wasn't really working for them anymore to believe that. It's true, but it wasn't working for them to believe that, because they wanted to believe that these corporations were going to come in and save them. They needed to be saved. So there were things that they knew, realities of this world that they understood, that they needed to start pretending that they didn't understand. And that happens with so many different types of things in our world, in terms of economics, and with Trump being in the White House. If there's anything that Trump advocates for, it's the job of liberals, at least the liberals that are wearing the team colors and everything like that. I still think of myself as a liberal. I still think of there as being a role for government in people's lives. I don't think that it should be completely divorced out of our existence. I think that the government is probably bigger than it should be. But I guess I still identify with those kind of core values in my youth. But whenever Trump will say something, even if it used to align with whatever liberals had advocated for, like for example, tariffs on China. China is a dictatorship. There are human rights violations happening left and right throughout China. Environmentally, it's a shit show over there. As an American, how much can we really point fingers? But it's okay for the pot to call the kettle black as long as it's also calling itself black. There were so many reasons for imposing tariffs on China that liberals used to be all behind, and then as soon as it becomes kind of a Trump thing, they just kind of abandon all that stuff. And there are all sorts of things you can criticize about the way that Trump's done it. It's so precipitous and so it's so extreme. That's just the way that Trump operates. And again, I think that Trump is doing that stuff is more for like the bang and the wow factor. But liberals kind of forget all the stuff that they used to believe or used to know about the way economics and tariffs kind of work. Tariffs are extra taxes, and liberals are supposed to love extra taxes. More money going into the coffers for public services and everything. It doesn't always work that way, but liberals used to advocate for all these things, and then again, as soon as Trump comes out and he advocates for something himself, liberals have to pretend that they don't remember any of the stuff that they used to remember that led to them believing the things that now Trump is suggesting, but they're not allowed to believe them anymore. So anyway, it really feels a lot like when I'm interacting with people, that I'm interacting with that pirate at the theme park that has to pretend, because it's his job, that he doesn't know what a cell phone is or whatever. And I really find that irritating. And again, in the same way that I find it irritating to talk with talking with people in character. I used to be a cinematographer. I would do shooting on films. And there were some actors that would like to get into character, and this was just easier for them, where they would just get into character and they would just be in that character the whole time that they're shooting. And I never liked interacting with those people. I respected what they were doing. It's not, I'm not taking a crap on it like I am about like my liberal friends and all that, because there's different motivations. They're doing what they need to do to stay in character, just so they can do the best job they can at their job as they can. But I did not like interacting with people being fake, being phony, pretending that they believe things they don't believe, pretending they don't believe things that they do believe. And that, it just really kind of rubs me the wrong way, interacting with people like that, especially where, when you're interacting with the pirate at the theme park, there aren't any stakes to it. It's just silliness. I find it a little grating, but it's just silliness. When you're interacting with the actor on set, there's no stakes. Just like, he's doing his thing, you don't like interacting with him, but there's no consequences to it. But when it's the real world and you have people that are, divorcing themselves from things that they used to understand, it does have consequences. And, it irritates me all the more for it. And I've been finding that I've had a lot of trouble interacting with people lately because, and I shouldn't say trouble interacting with people. I still interact with people, but I find it unrewarding and irritating interacting with people because of that. People are, creating fantasy worlds for themselves, whether it's a fantasy world so that they can, stay on their team liberal, or it's a fantasy world because they can stay on their team conservative. I've got plenty of shade to throw on, the people that consider themselves conservatives. I've been ripping on liberals this whole video, but, I think that the science of climate change is just so damn simple. It's just, our climate is based on output from the sun, the composition of the Earth's atmosphere, and there's various other elements in there too, but it's pretty much energy in, energy out. If the sun puts out more energy, more heat falls on the Earth, and if the atmosphere is more insulating, then we keep more of that heat. And insofar as we are changing the composition of the atmosphere, we have to be changing the way, the properties of that atmosphere, and it just so happens that we're changing it in a way that makes it more insulating. It could not be more simple. And yet there are people that are on that team conservative, and a lot of you guys watching this, Charles, I'm just going to say your name. I have a lot of respect for you, but I just really disagree with you guys on this one point. I don't. It just seems so simple to me. I feel like people get into mind, and again, I'm not crapping on anyone in particular. It's just I'm just shooting my mouth off and just kind of being honest about the way this kind of stuff registers with me. I feel like people got beliefs that they feel they need to believe, and they kind of change the facts around in their head to try to make that make sense. And over the past several years, you would think that that would be harder and harder with preparedness types of things, because the facts are just so obvious right in your face. People mess with viruses in labs. Those viruses occasionally, leak out of that lab. COVID was not the first time that happened. It had happened on a number of occasions prior to that. The only thing that was different about COVID is that it was so good at spreading because it had a longer incubation period, and it was, it was very contagious. There have been plenty of other things that leak out of labs, and the idea that people aren't concerned about that, nobody's stocking N95 masks or any of the kind of medications, or is even ready for another kind of pandemic situation. When I say nobody, I mean like the normal people. They just went through it, and it's not really even on their radar anymore. In terms of geopolitical stuff and war, people have themselves convinced that it just ain't going to happen. It won't happen, directly to them, or in their area, or during our time. People just have themselves convinced that they are insulated from that occurring to them. And it just goes on and on and on. Environmental factors and everything. And that's another one that just bugs me with liberals, is that on Team Liberal, you are supposed to believe, and I happen to agree with them on this, maybe not to the degree that some of their predictions go, but I happen to agree with them that if you're on Team Liberal, you're supposed to believe that climate change is an existential crisis for humanity, and I do believe that's the case. And so are allegedly all the liberals supposed to believe that. And yet, Are they doing anything about it? Like when they talk about it, they give lip service to it, and they'll talk about how important it is that we do X, Y, and Z. Of course, they still go on their vacations on an airline, and they drive all over the place, and they don't really do a tremendous amount of stuff to really change anything in their lives. It's like, I'm going to remodel my kitchen, and I'm going to put in bamboo, because bamboo is like, green. It's like, well, it'd actually be even more environmentally friendly to not remodel your kitchen, and then their face glazes over, whatever. So, conservatives don't worry too much about liberals being this like alien species. They're exactly the same as everybody else. They still waste as much as anybody else. It's just they do the lip service to it. And with climate change, they do the lip service. Climate change is like this existential crisis, and it is gonna, wipe out all of humanity. Okay, and I agree with, well, I don't agree it's going to wipe out all humanity, but I agree that it's an existential issue for a lot of people. It's a huge issue. But largely speaking, they don't do anything about it. I mean, they certainly aren't changing their lives to collectively try to make our world, avoid it. I think that, the ship has sailed on that one anyway. The only next thing that you can do is to get ready for it. But most of the people that are saying that they believe that this is going to happen, they're not even getting ready for it. So it's just all like lip service. So it's, I don't know, what is this video even about? It's just me bitching about I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what this video is about. I think I shared everything that was on my chest. I got to get back to chopping firewood. I'm chopping firewood now, not for this coming winter. I'm recording this in April of 2025. All the firewood I'm chopping now, I'm not even going to be using it in the winter of 2025-26. This is going to be the firewood I'm doing now is for the winter of 2026-2027. I'm putting it in the far end. So this stuff gets really, really dry. I got an awesome woodshed where I can keep the stuff, and I've got a core of the woodshed. I like never even get in there. I probably got like, I don't know, I'm not good at measuring how much wood I got in my woodshed. I got a lot of wood in my woodshed. I could probably go for like 3 years. 4 years maybe, without having to cut any more firewood. But every spring, I want to get on it, and it's good exercise, so I'm going to get back to it. That's it. Hope you found this video lengthy. Thanks for watching. Hey YouTube preppers, if you enjoyed this video, here's another that I think you might like. But before you click on it, I wanted to take a moment to thank all the people you see on the right-hand side of your screen. They help to support all the work that I do here over at patreon.com. If you'd like to join them and get your name added to the list, the link's below.